What is up, everyone? Welcome to part 2 of the AMA podcast. I know technically, probably this is part 3 because we've already done one other AMA podcast early on. I think that was like maybe episode 7 of the Parisi podcast. I filmed part 1 of this AMA podcast. We covered 7 awesome questions. The last question was really good. How do we build confidence in athletes? So if you haven't checked out part 1, please make sure you go back and check that out. We're going to pick right up where we left off. We have 8 questions. I was set 15 original questions for these podcasts. I covered 7 in the first episode. We're going 8 deep on this episode. Let's get right into it. What is your go-to drill for improving acceleration or first step quickness? Okay, my favorite drill, and go-to is tough because you really need to know what the athlete is struggling with. But for the sake of answering this question in the most black and white way I like lunge starts. And I'll tell you why. So have the athlete start down in a lunge, like either knee hovering 2-3 inches off the ground, or you can have that knee straight down on the ground. From there, you're going to have them lean forward, adjust their arm action so that they have an opposite arm, opposite leg relationship, and then they're going to take off into a sprint. Typically somewhere 5, 8, 10 yards into a deceleration. So I like that to develop a certain level of first step quickness because you're starting in deeper hip flexion than a traditional 2-point start. So you're going to have to overcome some serious range of motion. Because of the static start, if your knee is on the ground, you can really work on the athlete getting a good lean forward, a good positive shin angle in the lead leg, and getting their weight distribution into that lead leg. So they're going to have a nice push, good environmental feedback for the athlete. You're going to be able to start the athlete's arms correctly, and they're going to have to really punch the arms to get out of that deep range of motion in that front leg hip flexion. And then because the athlete is rising out and forward, they have to really get into a good acceleration forward position where their trail leg isn't going to come through all the way. So there's a lot of really good things that happen for the athlete. From a coach's perspective, you can coach the athlete to get into better positions. So you're doing your job, coach. And the environment is going to put the athlete in a position to either do it well or learn from it. They're either going to pop straight up or they're going to get forward and propel forward. And I've even actually seen athletes stumble out of the start because they're getting their center of mass way out in front, way more than they're used to. So it gives a lot of feedback. It provides a lot of environmental cueing and puts the athlete in a good position. So that's my go-to when it comes to first step quickness, a static lunge start into a sprint. Okay, number 9. Do you think multi-sport athletes have an advantage? I like this. This is a kind of a spicy question. I think multi-sport athletes do still in 2025 have an advantage. However, I'm gonna say this. This is not part of the question. I think in 2025 being a multi-sport athlete does not mean the same thing as being a multi-sport athlete 15, 20 years ago. I do think it is obviously beneficial that athletes are exposed to different sports to train different things. But what I will say is that being a multi-sport athlete, I will use an example of an athlete that I train right now. This is why I think that is no longer a true advantage. It's still good. You should still do it. But here's the situation of how being a multi-sport athlete may not be that great. This is an athlete that I work with. She goes to dance once a week for 3 classes. So 3 hours of dance. She plays on 2 different softball teams in the fall. She also goes to a field hockey skills clinic in the fall as well. So multi-sport, 3 sports. But total hours of sports being played is wild. We're talking 21 hours, right? Over the weekend, tournaments every weekend, depending on the levels, here to there. If this tournament gets canceled or we can't get to there, we're going to this one. If we have a night free, we're going here. So if your athlete is playing multiple sports, great. But I think we need to shift our attention from the idea of playing a single sport, multi-sport, and just the hours, the workload that the athlete is partaking in sports. General, whether it be I play basketball, because you can be a basketball player and have different levels of intensity. So I'll say this, I played lacrosse only. I got cut from every other sports team that I ever tried out for. I played lacrosse year round. This is obviously decades ago, but I didn't have the opportunity to play multiple sports because I wasn't good at other sports. So I played lacrosse year round, but there were different levels of competition and different time commitments seasonally. So in the summer, it was camps. They were half day, week long, week on, week off, whatever. In the fall, it was one practice a week and then game situation, maybe a scrimmage throughout the week, whatever. And that was pretty consistent for about 6 weeks. And then we had a little bit of downtime that we would play indoor, which was different, completely different positions, etc. And that was, again, twice a week, building up to our outdoor season in the spring, which was 7 days a week, 6 days a week, for 13 to 16 weeks, depending on playoffs. So I played one sport. I didn't play multiple sports. And I think people would say, well, you're better for playing multiple sports. I wasn't good enough to play multiple sports. So in a world where now there's, I'll say the money grab in youth sports, that was a question we had in the first AMA part of this podcast. The money grab is next level now. So there's always going to be opportunities to play because an organization is just going to add another team and put lesser skilled players on that team to collect their money because it's a for-profit company at this point. So there's always going to be opportunities to play, but it doesn't necessarily make it right. So just because you're saying you're a multi-sport athlete in 2025, 2026, I think we need to shift and look at the total workload, the total hours playing in sports. Because I'd rather see someone playing one sport who's managing their time better, and then obviously as a second sport, adding in some type of physical development, some type of sports performance, which again was a piece of advice that I gave in the first AMA podcast. So if you didn't listen to it, you should go back and listen to that one because they talk about the importance of 52 workouts a year and where that would fall as far as parenting advice goes. So that is my question. Maybe a little hot takey. I don't know if it's hot takey, but the multi-sport versus sports specialization doesn't bother me in 2025 like it did in 2020, or I'll say 2012, right? 2013, it bothered me. But now I'd rather just see what the athlete's total workload is and see what they're doing for physical preparation. That's really it. Really, any age. I don't care if you're 7, 17, any age. I want to see those two numbers for an athlete's schedule. What is one thing you've changed your mind about as a coach? Ooh, okay. One thing you've changed your mind about as a coach. Okay. This might ruffle some feathers, but it's a podcast, so I'll be able to explain it. I don't think absolute strength matters as much as I used to think it mattered. Back when I was a younger coach, I would often chase 5 rep, 3 rep, 1 rep, 2 rep maxes with athletes when appropriate, right? But if you were younger, we would look for that 5 rep. If you were developing, if you were older, it was 3 rep, it was 1 rep. Percentage-based programming, estimated 1 rep off the 3 rep. And I thought that if we could get the athlete stronger, we were building a more robust athlete. 2025, I really don't care about absolute strength almost at all. I know there's a lot of context with the athlete and the athlete's needs on that, but I care a lot more about structural and positional integrity of the athletes as it relates to sports performance. And then I care more about what qualities the athlete needs to display for their sports. So if you're a young athlete, 9, 10, 11, I don't really care about your strength levels rather than that's mostly other than a quality you may need to display for your sport. If you're going to put pads on, hockey, lacrosse, football, whatever, and you need to have a certain level of strength to overcome the added weight, then I care. And we can get relatively stronger, right? Relative strength becomes a key factor there. If you are a collegiate athlete, and I had this conversation with a skier that I train just actually 2 days ago. I said, if your back squat goes up, do you become a better skier? Maybe when you're 14, right? Because that's a sports skill that you need to display at that time. Context matters here. But as a 20-year-old, if your back squat goes up 20 pounds, do you ski faster? She said, no, probably not at this point. So it's okay. So there's other qualities that we can work on. We can maintain that quality. Cool. It's a lot easier to maintain strength than it is to build it. We can maintain that quality, but let's put some effort into these other sport skills that you can take into your sport. So something that I have changed my mind on is the role of absolute strength. Obviously, there's a ton of context. I'm not saying it doesn't matter. I'm less worried about it in 2025, unless it needs to be worried about, right? So that's kind of my stance now when I work with individuals is what do you need for your sport? What skills? How can we get there? What tools can we use to get those training qualities met and implemented? And that has been hard for me to remove bias, train people differently than I train people differently because of their needs. Even if they're the same sport, same position, I might have two basketball players, but they have different internal abilities, different cognitive focus, different learning styles, whatever. So we may use different objects to train the same things, different training tools to train the same qualities, but then again, context matters, especially in team and individual training. So I'm not here to tell you how to train. I'm just here to share my thoughts as it relates to this question. So let's move on. Question number, this is 11. So we're moving again to 15 from part 1. If you haven't seen part 1, go watch it. Go watch it. If you're listening, I just pointed at the screen. If you're watching, you just saw me point at you. Okay. How do you handle athletes who don't buy in right away? Like this. Okay. How do you handle athletes who don't buy in right away? So, who don't buy in. So, what are they buying into? Right? So, I've always said, when an athlete comes into our facility, we don't care about ability. We don't care how fast you run. We care about two things. One, how you treat others in the training group. And two, that you try, that you give effort, right? So we care more about, you can say attitude and effort, but really, as long as you're nice, you don't have to be nice to me. That's kind of my quasi-parenting philosophy as well. You don't have to be nice to me, but you need to be nice to others, okay? You need to be nice to yourself. You need to be nice to others. And you need to bring in a level of effort. That's why you're here. You're here to put forth an effort. You don't necessarily need to like me. And that's something that when I worked in a previous life as a strength conditioning coach, Division II school here in Vermont, St. Michael's College. And I would say this to teams. I say, hey, there's going to be days you don't like me. There's going to be days I don't like you. But I can assure you of two things. I'm going to come in. I'm going to be kind. I'm going to be kind to you. I'm going to be kind to myself. And I'm going to give you my best effort. Right? That's all I ask for. So those are the two things that I'm looking for an athlete to buy into. You need to come in, you need to be kind to others. You need to be putting forth an effort. And if I had an athlete, if I didn't think they were giving their best effort or they weren't being kind, we'll tackle the effort here first. I would talk to them and I would say, I find you're only disappointed if you don't set expectations. If you're leaving expectations up for interpretation, you're leaving yourself open to be very disappointed in the future. So that was a learning curve for me as a coach. Let's set expectations. Those are two expectations. And I would start sessions by saying, are you ready to give your best effort in today? So we're giving effort today. Here's the effort we're going to give. And I would use that word a lot. And if I saw an athlete not able to give their best effort or wasn't willing to give their best effort, I had different checkpoints in my training sessions that I could work with them on those, whether it be the warm-up, first water break, second water break. When I planned my training sessions, I would give myself these checkpoints to be able to go up to those athletes and say, hey, I'm noticing this, what's up? What's going on? And I would just give them a chance. I wasn't publicly calling them out. I wasn't making an example of them. I would talk to them and I would say, hey, what's up? What do you need from me? I see you're not able to give your best effort today. What do you need from me? How can I help you? And that was it. It was this level of just being a human, like human to human interaction. Is something that was brought to me. I actually just wrote an Instagram post about this a couple weeks ago, but this one of my mentors growing up, his name was Todd Bumgardner. I say growing up. One of my mentors as a young trainer This gentleman, Todd Bumgarner, is in a mentorship group called Strength Action. He talked a lot about unconditional positive regard, just meeting someone where they're at. And that could be when they come to you. That could be overall when you first meet them, where they're at in the individual session, today, versus next week, versus next year, whatever. So I operate a lot under that philosophy of meeting someone where they're at. So leveling with them. And I would even say this if it was me. Hey guys, I just want to let you know, I'm going to give you my best effort today, but it may seem different. Just know I'm good. I'm going to give you my best effort, but I'm going to need you guys to help carry me through this session today. And I would level with them. Human to human, unconditional positive regard, like accept me where I'm at. I'm going to accept you where you're at, or we're going to get better. So how would I work with an athlete who wasn't buying in? One, I would lay out the expectations of what I'm expecting from them session to session as they're training. And then two, I would try to connect with them human to human first. And then I give them an out, right? If an athlete just wasn't doing it, I say, hey, listen, I see you're not bringing it today. Here's what I need you to do. Take some time, go grab a foam roller and just roll it out. Just spend some time on yourself. I've excused athletes from sessions, not in a malicious way or anything like that, but hey, you're not bringing it. I see you got to take care of your others. You got to take care of yourself. And you got to take care of yourself right now. That's totally fine. I get it. I'll catch you in the next workout. There's nothing wrong with that. Just connecting human to human. I think it's just the part of coaching that we often, I think, neglect, right? You could be a hardo, scream at them, whatever. That never worked for me. All right. Our next question here. What should an athlete do on off days to get ahead? I love this question. So I view your performance as a table, 4 legs of a table. We have physical training, we have recovery, we have nutritional, and we have, I'll say like mental health, like interpersonal health, whatever it may be, right? So if you take away one leg of your table, you have a 3-legged table. That table can still stand up. It's going to be a little wobbly. You don't want to push on one corner to fall over. But all intents and purposes, 3-legged table, it'll balance. If you take away 2 legs, you have 2 on, 2 off. Your table can balance, but if you push on it, it's going to be real hard to balance. But be very gentle. Move very slowly around this 2-legged table. A table doesn't stand with 1 leg, right? So I love that 4-legged table analogy. When someone is doing an off day to get ahead, we're trying to build a robust table. So let's just say you're not putting forth any physical effort on that leg today. What are the other 3 legs you can improve on, right? Knowing that 4th leg is going to come back stronger. So prioritize the good quality night of sleep. What does that mean? Cutting caffeine at an appropriate time during the day. Eating dinner a little earlier so it can digest. Doing your work so that you don't have to stay up late. Added recovery work. Maybe you're going for a walk. Maybe you're spending some time on some soft tissue work, stretching while you're watching Netflix at night. Interpersonal. Call a friend. Call your parents. Have a conversation with them. Talk to your siblings. Whatever it might be. Do something for yourself outside of sports and physical training. Nutrition. Go grocery shopping. Prep some food. Eat some good food. Make sure you're getting some quality protein in. Maybe you need some more carbohydrates to refuel from a big effort, from game day, whatever it might be. But be intentional, plan for it, and do it. But look at those 4 categories. I hold up 3 fingers. Look at those 4 categories, okay? Be physical, your recovery, mental state, and then nutrition. Okay, so do something for yourself in one of those 4 areas. What separates a good coach from a great coach? A good coach from a great coach. Okay, so we got 2 very, I like the word choice there, good and great. So good coaches show up, right? I'll say a good coach is always a 7, an 8, a 9. They can even be a 10, okay? Good coaches show up. Great coaches show up. And they help others show up too. This is something that, kind of going back a couple questions, right? How do you talk to an athlete that isn't buying in? I think great coaches are very good at getting other athletes and other coaches that they work with to show up with that, right? Those are great coaches. Those are you've heard stories of it, or you've had one, the coaches that players want to play for. These are the coaches that people want to go to work and be with that coach. They want to be around that person. Athletes want to come in and train with that coach. They're disappointed if they're not in that coach's group today. So good coaches show up, they do everything by the books, and they're great, or they're good, right? Don't get me wrong. They're 7, 8, 9s, 10s. Great coaches are still 7, 8, 9s, 10s, but they can make everyone else join them as 7, 8, 9s, and 10s, right? They can make the 5 a 7. They can make the 7 a 9. They can make the 8 a 10. They can elevate everyone else around them, again, by a bunch of different ways, but having that human-to-human connection. So that's what I think separates a good from a great coach. I'm sure everyone else has different questions, opinions on that, or can answer that question differently, but that's what I see. 2 questions left. Second to last. How do you train speed when you don't have fancy equipment or a field? I like this question. I was actually just thinking about this for an upcoming Bill Parisi podcast. This was something that Bill said. I remember being young, impressionable, 21, it's 2011, June 2011. I can remember very specifically the month. Bill running our certification in Fair Lawn, New Jersey. He said, you should be able, after this week of training, whole week, 7 days, crazy. A lot of ice baths. Sore. He said, we should be able to drop you on a field anywhere in the United States, and you should be able to train anyone. Anyone. Team of 50, team of 10, a group of 12, a group of 2, 1, pro, Olympic, novice, you should be able to train them. No equipment needed. Anywhere. Baseball field, soccer field, parking lot, parking garage, you should be able to do it. So I like this question because that was quite literally how I was brought up as a Parisi coach back in the day, was what do you do if you don't have anything? The nice thing is when you're learning skills, that is independent from equipment. In today's world, people are selling products. So they say, hey, this is used for this very specific thing. You can use this product for 8 different ways around this different thing. But it's really important that we learn as coaches skills, and then we're deriving exercises that create outcomes for those skills. Meaning, I can take an athlete from a plank position and work on a mountain climber and reinforce acceleration-based skills. I can take an athlete in a parking lot, right, and take one parking space and do multi-directional work in confined areas, scripted agility. I should be able to take any surface and be able to do low-level plyometrics. I remember being the coach in our facility when it was humming. We had 7 coaches. I might have 12 kids and 5 yards of turf. And I would take them through an acceleration class at 5 yards. I would take them through multi-direction at 5 yards. I'd take them through strength training with 5 yards and some kettlebells, right? When you think about training as skill sets, you can now start to think about what exercise reinforces those skill sets, and you don't need equipment. Equipment just becomes a tool in your toolbox. We already heard of this metaphor, this proverbial toolbox that we have, but you need to understand training principles, not training exercises. If you understand the principles, you know how to match the exercises to those principles, and you don't need equipment to do that. So to answer that question very bluntly, you don't need fancy equipment. You need to understand training principles, and then you can create what exercises work to achieve those principles. The final question on part 2 of this AMA-style podcast: what does success look like to you as a performance coach? So I think of this in 2 very non-traditional ways. Success number 1 means that you can work as a performance coach and pay your bills without needing a part-time job. I love, to me, like if I'm talking to other people and they're like, yeah, I work as a performance coach, but then they have 2 other jobs to pay the bills, you don't really work as a performance coach, right? But if your sole income comes from performance coaching, I think you're a successful performance coach. That's what success means to me, that you're able to provide for your lifestyle, family, from your career, your passion. I love that. The second, I'm not there yet. Success means that you can retire, right? You've done the steps, you've worked, you can retire as a performance coach. That's something that we share in our messaging with All Access, is we're here to help you retire as a performance coach. I don't know anyone who's retired as a performance coach. someone who's retired even as a personal trainer. So success to me that you can be financially secure in your profession. If you're not, it's a hobby. So to me, that is what success means. I know it's maybe not the most sparkful answer to end this podcast with, but I do think that matters. I know we don't get into it for the money, but you have to stay in it for the money, right? So I'll be very, very forward about that. You get into it because it's a passion of yours. You like working with people and you like what the industry could bring, but you don't stay in an industry if it doesn't provide for you as an individual. So I'm very passionate about that as well. So that is how I would answer the last question. What does success mean to me? As a performance coach, it means you can provide for yourself financially so that you can stay in the industry and keep giving to others. Thank you guys so much for joining me on these 2 parts AMA-style podcast. If you have a question that you want us to answer here at Parisi, drop us a line at info@parisischool.com. I will make sure that email address is in the show notes. Send in your questions. We'll collect them. We'll do an AMA-style podcast, or we might do a whole podcast about your question. Who knows, depending on what that question is. But thank you so much for joining me, and I will catch you all on the next episode.